Hey, what's up guys? It's Kat. I am back with a book called Covet by Ella James. Ella James I have never read before, and I know she's written several books. I just had never read any of them. And let me tell you, I think this is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. It really surprised me. When I first started reading it, I didn't really connect with it. I kept reading it because I liked the way it was written, and I am not one to put a book down. I will push through even if I don't like it, if the writing style doesn't work or if I don't connect with a character. I still believe in the process and the art of writing, so I feel like as a reader it's important for me to finish the book even if it wasn't something that was particularly for me. So that being said, I wasn't sure that I understood where the book was going the first couple of chapters. I wasn't sure that I connected with it. But then it hit me like a ton of bricks and I was all in. And I'm so pleasantly, completely surprised by how much I loved it and how invested I became. So it's called Covet by Ella James, and I wasn't sure where Covet was going to fit into the story. I read the blurb that comes along with it, and it seemed like a great love story, but it's so much more than just a love story. And I wasn't sure, and I didn't find out literally until almost the end of the book where the word covet comes in. So let me tell you about it. It is about, the characters are Finley and Declan. I love their names. Finley she lives on an island called Tristan, which is inhabited by, I don't know how many, is it hundreds of people? It's a small island, very remote, hard to get to. So they kind of have their own little people. They're English, and I think it's off the South African coast. So there's a ship that will come and bring them supplies, I think every other month or every 6 weeks, so you have to put in an order for what you need. They farm on the island, so they're self-sustainable. There is internet, but it's not widespread. They each have their own jobs to make sure that everything gets done that needs to get done. They have a mayor, they have a doctor, they have restaurants. There's tourists. You can go and visit there, but so it's a present day story, but yet there's this innocence and remoteness that this island has. Finley is a resident of the island. She's, I think, in her late 20s about when we're learning about her in the book, and she has lived there her whole life. Her parents were met there, and the book starts out with a tragic situation that her parents are in, and she becomes parentless and ends up living the rest of her life with her grandmother until her grandmother passes away. So like I said, everyone on the island has their own jobs and their own part of kind of how the island works, and Finley seems to be almost untethered to any of those things. She is kind of a nurse. She kind of goes and helps in the fields. She might kind of be a shepherd, a little bit of some of the animals. She ends up, which was so sweet, there was a lamb that gets lost from its mother, and I think the mother sheep died, but in any case, but she takes this little lamb in and she calls it Baby, and it's like her little pet, and it's really sweet. It was like Baby was its own little character. And so that's Finley. In the beginning of the story, you hear her mom talking to her. That's the first scene, and talking about a prince, and it's Prince Declan, and her mom tells her stories about this Prince Declan. So Finley was raised with thinking that there's this Prince Declan, that her mom told her about, whatever. And then you meet Declan, and Declan is from America. He's a pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, and he's coming to Tristan to spend some time there. And as the story goes, it turns out that he had visited Tristan, I don't know, before when he was a young kid, 8 years old, I think, with his father. And it was the second time that his father had been there. And when he's going to the island now, it's because there's been a shipment that he's going in and accompanying. And it turns out that you find out that his father has been a big benefactor to bringing things to the island and keeping the island up to date with, certain things that they don't have. And really, benefactor is really the word that I can come up with. So, but then you also know that he's a drug addict and he's trying to get clean, and he feels like if he goes there and he's away from everything that's led him to, his life and using drugs and being in the public eye. And so basically he's trying to go dry out in some place that is safe for him, where nobody really knows him. There's not paparazzi. There's, but yet he is kind of famous there because of his dad, but it's a safe place for him. So many levels that you uncover in the story, and they all tie together, and there's a lot going on. And yeah, and I think that's why it was hard for me to connect to start with, because I didn't know where the story was going, and then all of a sudden it goes, and I was along for the ride. So when they meet, they don't like each other at first. And, you don't really, Finley seems to be very, innocent and naive, but yet not. Super smart. Everyone can count on her. But yet she's kind of alone because marriage prospects are scarce and there's no one really her age. She has some friends, but she's the older. They're a little bit younger than her, so there's no one really her age on the island. And you get this sense of loneliness with her, but yet she also, tends to the sheep, and she's out, climbing rocks, and she's repairing gulches after a big rain, and she's very competent. And then here, comes Declan, and they don't like each other at first, although they both know who each other is because of their childhoods and who their parents were. And you find out that basically their parents, their mom, Finley's mom, and Declan's father fell in love on the island before they were born. And it didn't work out, and he left. And then he came back for her, and she had passed away. And so they know about each other, but they didn't really have any other connection. And that was so sad. And they both, I think, they both internalized that and weren't really sure what it meant for them as people, but they know there's that they have this connection to the island, her as a resident and him as coming back to it. So they didn't really like each other, and a couple days goes by and he goes to find her to apologize because he realizes that he was, in a bad way when he met her, and that he yelled at her and whatever. And lo and behold, they are up hiking. He followed her on a hike, and they get stuck in this cave. This pile of rocks comes down and blocks their exit. And they get stuck there for a couple of days together. And terrifying, but yet she's like, oh, well, I'll be missed. Everyone will know that I didn't make the appointment I had with so-and-so, or they will know that they don't see me around town. So people will find us. And that's how small the population is of the island. And he, in the meantime, Declan is detoxing, and he doesn't want her to know, and he's trying to keep it to himself, and it's like, oh my gosh, and that level of he really didn't feel good, and Ella James brings you through that with him, through his character. And I thought that was something she did really well, because you she describes, through him, how he feels and what's happening to his body, and his mind, and certain quirks that he knows that will happen at certain times in his detox, because he's done it several times before but can never stay clean. And then, also in the cave, you also see Finley's personality, and she's mad at him, and she's like, he's such an ass, but yet she sees that he's not well, and she wants to go, help him. That's the sweetness, the vulnerability, the nurturer, the taking care of part of her personality. And you see that, and then that kind of breaks down their walls a little bit with each other. And they come out of that situation, basically they start chipping away at a rock with another rock, and with, I think she has some sort of a knife or something in her bag. And they chip away at the rock over like 4 days, and finally get out part way. So no one actually ever came and found them. They got out on their own. And then they part ways, even though they realized in that time that they were stuck in the cave that they really like each other. But she knows that she can't be with him. And he feels like she's a little bit hands off, like he shouldn't. So they separate. And that was like only a quarter of the way into the book. So that was kind of cool, because I thought, oh my gosh, where is the story going to go? That was the point where I was all in, and I couldn't wait to see where else it went. I really liked, in particular, Finley in this book. I really liked Declan as well, but there was just something about Finley that I really liked. The way she talked, the way she thought, the words she used. They're Catholic on the island, and so she would say, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, but yet, and that was like her swear word. She never cursed. She was kind of proper. There was just this, she carried herself in a certain way, and that's just the way she was. But yet, as she was falling in love with him, and they were becoming more involved, and they were becoming intimate, and there was this whole other kind of vixen side to her that, I loved seeing that part of her, because even though she was kind of proper, she was kind of a dirty girl. And he brought that out in her, because she's never been touched before. She's never had a boyfriend. She talks about that. She talks about how after her parents died that she didn't speak because it was so traumatic, and she was with them when it happened, that she didn't speak for many years after that. So not only was there not some, she didn't have peers her same age on the island, but then she had that. She was known as like the girl that happened to their parents, and she lived. And then she was known as the girl who didn't talk. And what that was like for her, because she said she felt like people didn't see her, and they certainly didn't hear her, so therefore they dismissed her, and they didn't really care about her. That she wasn't looked at as a young woman or a woman of marrying age when that time came, that she was even a prospect, that she had any prospects. And everyone around her, and they're conservative, and everyone around her is either has prospects to marry, there's people their age, or they're already married. And then there was just her, and I think she kind of felt like she was going to live her life in maybe a marriage of convenience with somebody that was older or younger than her, and or just by herself, and that was very lonely. But she really had this great personality that, in some of the words she used, she's one of the sentences she used when she's talking about Declan is that she's surprised by the level of adore she has for him. And just some of the things out of her mouth, they were so different. And I really liked the way she talked and their dialogue. It's my favorite part of the whole book is their dialogue back and forth with the choice of vocabulary that Ella James gave her. I really liked how when Finley decides that she has fallen in love with him, because at first she talks about how she's in lust with him, and he's very physically attractive to her, and she feels the electricity when he's around and his nearness, and that it's lust. And I think she tries to let that be it, and then come to find out that she's in love with him. And I loved how she loved him, and I think it has something to do with they don't because she lives on this island, they don't have all this outside influence on their lives. And so she just, and it's part of her personality that she just loves him, and it's not blind, but yet that's the base of how she relates to him, is that she knows that he's a drug addict and he's trying to get clean. So how can she help him? And she knows that, her friends need her in some capacity. So what can she do for them? That's her baseline. That's the way she is. But when it comes to Declan, she doesn't pity him. She doesn't let him get away with anything. She meets him in the middle, and she tries to understand where he's coming from. And I really enjoyed that about her, that her baseline go-to part of her personality was so open and came from a really good place, that's what came out of her first. And she loves him so thoroughly, and doesn't, at one point he's really sick, and in his detox, and she knows that he can't have anything really to make him feel better. And she has access to the doctor's office, because the doctor is actually overseas. He had a relative, he was shipped out when Declan came. He shipped out, and he's supposed to be there for 2 months. So she was the stand-in doctor. She has some level being able to take care of people. And that's, in the doctor's absence, that's what she's doing. People are coming to the doctor's office, and she's helping mend them and give, a baby gets sick. So she, gives a cough medicine, So she has that level that she can treat him with. But she knows she can't give him what's in the doctor's office. She can't give him opiates. She can't give him, things to make it better. So she makes, what's the word? Not a potion, but she makes something that he can have that, and it's got herbs in it, and she can give it to him, and it can help ease his symptoms a little bit. So she used what she could to help him, even though, and that didn't impede his progress, and it didn't impede what he was trying to do. All she was trying to do was help him the best way she can, because she loves him, and she hated seeing him that way. And I don't know if I'm articulating it well enough, but just, I felt very organically how she was and how she lived her life. And that was how she loved, if that makes any sense. Kind of at the point where they both realize that they are in love. And she's thinking she wants to leave the island when he is going to leave. She wants to leave and go with him. And he wants her to as well, because he said that she accepts him in a way that he's never felt before. And she'd been outrunning, herself in her own life on that island, you know, being the one that didn't speak, being the one that the parents died, all that. She had been outrunning that part of her life. And another really big part, which we don't find out until the end, but she literally is running away from him. She leaves the house that he's staying at and runs because she's overwhelmed completely. And she's told him some things, and she feels very raw and vulnerable, and feels like that he, you know, now he's seen, you know, all her flaws. And so she literally takes off, and he goes running after her because he himself has been running away from his life and the choices that he's made. And they're both runners. And yet he recognizes something in her. She obviously feels it too. And so he chases her. He literally runs after her and catches up with her. And he says, and it was so romantic, and I just love this part. He says, "Finally, I'm not the only damaged one." So it's like he sees his other half in her. It was so sweet, and it was very raw and emotional point in the book. And the book has so much emotion in it. When he says, you know, "Finally, I'm not the only damaged one," oh, I loved it. The damage that Declan feels like he has in his own life and himself, being damaged goods, he sees as her strength. Because when she comes, even though he's detoxing, she makes it better. His hands stop shaking. Just her mere presence calms him in a way and settles himself in a way that he's never experienced. So he sees that as his weakness is her strength. And I thought that was really cool. And, you know, all she wants to do is help him, you know, and I've talked about what I think, you know, what her baseline is. So the fact that, you know, her strength plays into his weakness, but it's not in a bad way. It's not enabling, and it's not, you know, it's not her turning to bad things. You know, it levels them out, and it matches them so perfectly. In each other, they see hope, and they couldn't be more different. You know, he's from America. He's this, you know, big baseball player, makes all this money, famous parents. You know, he's got it all. You know, and she's this, you know, woman that lives in this little, you know, cloistered, remote island off, you know, the coast of South Africa. Like, they couldn't be more different. But yet, that's where it doesn't matter. You fall in love with who you fall in love with. And they balance each other so well. And they give to each other so easily because they have met their other match. They had both said that they didn't really have hope anymore in each of their lives. You know, she felt like she was just gonna kind of live on this island. Oh, by the way, in order to stay on the island, you have to marry someone that lives on the island. And then in order to leave the island, you have to have permission from a spouse or a parent or something. So, you know, they're picky about who they let stay and who they let go. So that is hopeless to her. You know, she kind of feels like she's just going to kind of become this spinster. And, you know, she has a situation, which we find out later in the book that we didn't know. You know, there are these little tidbits of, we know that she has a secret that she's keeping from him. It was not what I at all expected it to be when we find out what the secret is. But getting back to, you know, they both feel hopeless. And yet, when they're together, they feel hopeful. And they kind of satiate satiate, what's the word? Each other's souls in that way. And together, their life is very hopeful. And that was very emotional. And I felt like Ella James really conveyed that. And I really felt that with her words. And I really wanted their relationship to, I had no idea where it was going to go. How was she going to be able to leave? Was he going to stay? You know, because the time is, you know, he's only there for 2 months. And I had no idea what it was going to be like at the end of the book. And I knew that she was keeping this secret, but I didn't know what the secret was. I had no idea. And I'm not going to tell you what it is either, because that would kind of give up the whole book in a lot of ways. So I really liked that part, that they felt very hopeful together after not feeling very hopeful. Finley describes them as like Noah's Ark, two of a kind. So when, you know, I said that he felt like he wasn't the only damaged one anymore, and he doesn't see her damage as a flaw. He sees it as his strength, right? So when she says, you know, he says that, and then she says it's like Noah's Ark, two of a kind, I knew that they were exactly on the same page with each other. The last few chapters of this book, because, you know, Ella James kind of waited until almost the end of the book till like things hit the fan. And in between those times where I wasn't quite sure if I got it, and then the last couple chapters, the book was full of so much emotion. You know, she talks, I mentioned that she talks about him being a drug addict and trying to get clean. And I don't know what that's like. And I don't hope to ever know what that's like. Although I have had family members that have struggled with that to a certain extent, but to read those chapters from Declan's perspective, and that's something else that I liked, which I've always, you know, I always mention here, is that the chapters, you know, one was from Finley, one was from Declan. So we get both perspectives of the story, which I love when authors do that. So there's this part in the middle where they're falling in love and they're learning everything about each other and all that the book is all about and everything, their story. And then we get these last couple, you know, few, you know, 5-ish chapters or so where things hit the fan, and I was shocked and I didn't see it coming, like I said. So bravo, Ella James. And then the best part, which I can barely talk about, is the literally last couple of chapters, because the whole time you want to know, is she going to stay? Is she going to go? Are they going to stay together? Is he going to leave and they're going to break up? You know, all of that. That was in my mind the whole time. Is she going to stay on the island? Is he going to stay on the island? So that was on every single chapter. I was like, oh, you know, are they going to bring it up? Are they going to start talking about when it's time to go? And so the last few chapters of the book, I was so happy we got, because I felt like it really completed the story well. And I don't want to give too much away. But that being said, we get the full scope of their story. And I really like happily ever afters. It's no surprise that this is a happily ever after, but I know that means things for different people. So, but I really like happily ever afters, and I'm very happy to say that Covet has a happily ever after. There was a part where I thought it wasn't going to, and I was really mad because I don't like reading books that don't have it. I think life is hard enough. I don't need characters to die. I don't need characters to kill each other off. I don't need, you know, whatever it is. You know, I don't need I like drama in a love story, but I want there to be a happily ever after. And there was a part where I thought, oh no, this isn't one of those books. And because Ella James was a new author to me, I didn't know if she was like that. And so I was happy to know that even though there was a couple of chapters where I didn't know, that there's the story gets lovingly and painstakingly complete in a way that as a reader, I feel like I was very happy with it. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in today. Let me know if you have read Covet in the comments. And if you've read anything else of Ella James that I need to add to my to-be-read list, I'd appreciate you letting me know. And I will see you guys soon with my next book. I'm not sure what that's going to be. I'm reading one right now that's really good. And so we'll see if it's going to be that one or if it's going to be something else. I will do a May favorites, a flash kind of review like I did for April. I will do that again with some other, books that I will have read this month and let you know about those. So thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you soon. Bye.